Inamin naman ng Communist Party of the Philippines o CPP founder na si Jose Maria Sison na ang kanyang partido ay isang pangunahing kontributor sa kampanya ni Vice President LENI Robredo. Siya rin daw ang tumatayong advisor ng Vice Presidente at ng kanyang tagapagsalita na si Barry Gutierrez. Sa isang pahayag, hinikayat ni Sison ang lahat ng partisan na magtiyaga at maging matatag sa pagsuporta kay Robredo na nangakong tatayo kasama ang taong bayan para sa paglaban sa mapang-aping sistema. Nagbabala rin siya na ang masa ang mag-uudyok sa pagbagsak ng Administrasyong Duterte kung susubukan daw ng Pangulo na mandaya sa halalan. Nasentro ang pahayag ni Sison sa kampanya at strategy ng mga Vice Presidente kung saan hindi raw sinasadya na naging bahagi siya. Pag-amin pa ni Sison, ilang beses siyang nakausap sa telepono ni Gutierrez kung saan inilatag niya ang ilang mga punto kung paano simulan ang pag-atake ng media sa iba pang kandidato sa pagkapangulo, partikular na sina Mayor Isko Moreno at Presidential Candidate Bongbong Marcos Jr.
If the elections of 2022 were to be clean and honest, the Duterte regime and its chosen successors, headed by the Bongbong-Sara tandem, would be sure losers. Bongbong and Sara represent the most corrupt and brutal political dynasties in the history of Filipino reactionary politics. Their claims to being winners by virtue of paid, slanted opinion poll surveys, social media troll armies, and use of state and corporate media have been proven to be false by the far larger and more enthusiastic mass rallies being mobilized by the Isa Sambayan Alliance behind the opposition candidates led by the Robredo Pangilinan tandem. Unfortunately, the tyrant Duterte controls the bureaucracy and the military, especially the COMELEC and the electronic vote count. He will do everything in his power in order to rig the 2022 elections and make his successors winners through fraud and terrorism. He's worried to death that if the opposition wins, he would be arrested and brought to trial before the International Criminal Court for his crimes against humanity. He's also afraid that the new government will prosecute and try him for plunder. At the same time, the revolutionary movement has promised to the people that they will go after Duterte and his ruling clique for engaging in mass murder and plunder. Since observing the gigantic mass rallies mobilized by Isa Sambayan last month, Duterte has started to red tag the alliance of the Pink Party with the Makabayan Bloc and accused them of plotting a disruption of the elections. Why should they disrupt a process in which they are drawing the largest crowds of voters? Duterte has made a slip in speaking out his criminal mind. He indicates that he can make a false flag operation. He has also announced that he wants a seamless transfer of power, obviously to his chosen successors. This indicates that any time he can declare martial law and rig the elections in order to install his chosen successors in power. There is certainly, or at least a high probability, that Duterte will cheat or rig the 2022 elections unless his U.S. imperialist masters would decide to disbelieve his assurance that his successors will be able to continue the dirty work of finishing off the armed revolution, openly chunk him and his crew for having already destabilized the ruling system and allowed the opposition to have their electoral victory as in 1986, when Marcos could not take advantage of his electoral cheating. But why should Bayan participate in the 2022 elections if Duterte will be able to use his power to rig the elections and there is yet no certainty that he can be thwarted beforehand or after the rigging as in 1986? If you do not participate and others also do not participate in the elections, then how can you arouse, organize and mobilize the millions of people to prove, even before election day, that the topmost successors of Duterte are already discredited, isolated, and sure losers in the elections? If you call for a boycott of the elections, then Duterte and his clique will not even have to cheat, and you and the people will not have any reason to be angry about any cheating. It is not the role and task of Bayan, Makabayan Bloc, Bayan Muna, and other partyless groups to conduct themselves like the revolutionary forces of the people that are banned from participating in the 2022 elections and that are in favor of building the people's revolutionary government in opposition to the reactionary state. There are times when legal democratic forces can debate whether they ought to participate or boycott the elections staged by the reactionary classes. But so far, with regard to the elections of 2022, there is still an opportunity wide enough for them to expose and oppose the electoral fraud and terrorism being prepared by the Duterte regime. If the Duterte regime succeeds in putting in power his chosen successors headed by Bongbong and Sara, there is the prospect of gigantic mass actions of the people rising up to prevent the usurpation of power as in 1986. But it is also possible this may not arise as quickly as in February 1986, because Duterte has already threatened to make a seamless transfer of power by declaring martial law in order to suppress the people and opposition forces through mass arrest, exemplary killings, censorship, confiscations, and other foul acts. In that case, the alternative for the people is to resist in ways similar to those of the people who have dedicated themselves to the armed revolution. And certainly, the People's Democratic Revolution, through protracted People's War, will become stronger because of the grave political and economic crisis of the ruling system. As the dominant power in the Philippines, U.S. imperialism will have to weigh whether to believe that the Marcos Duterte tandem will be able to continue successfully the brutal campaign of anti-communist oppression, or let the Robredo-Pangilinan tandem take power and try to stabilize the situation as Cory Aquino did in 1986. I presume that the U.S. knows the prospective real winner in the 2022 elections from the usual opinion poll survey that the CIA secretly directs from month to month before election day in the Philippines. If an Aquino type of regime like that of Robredo-Pangilinan will arise, we can expect the usual first 6 months to 1 year of the regime to be a period in which there will be public or third-party clamor for resuming the GRP and NDP peace negotiations, and the contending parties will have to make their best possible responses to such clamor. I would expect Bayan to be among those progressive forces putting forward its own timely people's agenda to encourage substantive negotiations on social, economic, and political reforms until U.S. imperialism, the big compradors and landlords, and the reactionary military officers pressure the high bureaucrat capitalists in place to slow down on the peace negotiations and speed up the campaign of military suppression. Thank you.